I'm going to ask that you indulge me. Someone I know passed away, and I was kind of surprised by this. I've mentioned before that I used to live in a small town called Eau Claire, Michigan. Eau Claire, Michigan. I lived there for a year or two. And it's down here in the corner of the state, down not far from Berrien Springs or Niles. And when I moved to town, I noticed there was a hamburger stand right there on the main stretch. One of the ones that you walk up to, you can order ice cream, you can order food, sit at a picnic table and eat it. A little drive-through, you can pick up the food if you wanted to. And there's a big grassy area, big, almost like a park around it. And it was actually right downtown Eau Claire. It's still there. And so when I moved to town, it was closed for the season. So I was riding my mountain bike around one day in town, and I saw somebody working there, clearly getting it ready to open up. So I pulled up, and I introduced myself, and the woman who owned it, her name was Christine. And she said, yeah, this is my stand. And I said, oh, when do you open? She goes, depending on the weather and how soon I can clean it up. Soon? I said, okay. And so one day, I got up in the morning. I could actually see the stand out my window. I got up one morning, and I saw a car in the parking lot, which led me to believe that she was going to open up that day. I walked down there, and I was her first customer of the summer. Very, very nice woman. She had bought the stand a few years earlier. She lived in town. She had kids who went to local high school. I got to know them all eventually. And I made a point of stopping in there quite often. And they had food, so I could eat lunch there. They made pizzas. I'd occasionally go over and get pizza and bring it back. Whenever friends visited me in Eau Claire, we'd go down there and eat lunch. Did that many, many times. And I'd also often be riding my mountain bike, and at the end of the loop, I'd stop there, have some ice cream, and then go home and finish off for the day. And, I saw on Facebook yesterday that she passed away. And if my math is correct, I believe she was in her 50s. And so I was just stunned because she's one of those people. I've got 5,000 friends on Facebook that I'd see posts from occasionally, and I'd follow her and her family, and I knew where her kids were in school and all that. And I did not know that she had any health issues of any sort, so it was a shock. And I mean, I was actually stunned reading these comments and these posts going like, really? And it just got me thinking about my time in Eau Claire because that was such a big part of it, even though you don't think of it that way at the time, So I'll tell you some stories. For instance, I was talking to her one day, and she told me a couple of things that, she loved to hire local kids and give them jobs. And but I mentioned her one day. I said, your food is actually really good. I said, you have to understand, if you stop at the typical hamburger stand or ice cream place out in the middle of nowhere and order food, it's usually iffy. And she goes, oh, I actually make a point of buying extremely good materials so that the ingredients and everything are the best that they can be and the stuff tastes good. She goes, that's a conscious effort on my part. But she goes, but thank you for noticing. And I bought something that had bacon on it. And I said, the bacon, for instance, was amazing. And she goes, oh my gosh, the bacon supplier I have has the greatest bacon. She goes, do you like bacon? I said, yes. She goes, would you like a case? I said, sure. It didn't dawn on me what a case was when you're speaking to somebody who runs a restaurant. A couple days later, I'm riding my bike by, and she waves, motions for me to come over. And she goes, your case of bacon came in. You want to pick that up right now? She goes, it's in my freezer. I said, hang on. I ran home. I think it's on my mountain bike. Ran home, grabbed my wallet, came back, and she brings out a 25-pound case of bacon. And now, some people would have said, 25 pounds, what am I going to do with that? I said, oh, no, okay, thank you. And I paid her for it. Bring this case of bacon home. Now, I got to tell you, this is when I had Wolfie. Milo had passed away, but I still had Wolfie. And Wolfie sees me carry this box in. He's curious about that. And I couldn't fit it in the fridge or the freezer, so I had to bust it open and stick most of it in the freezer, put some in the fridge. And Wolfie was curious as to what all this was. And I'm going to tell you right now, I didn't like feeding Milo and Wolfie table scraps. I didn't want them to become begging dogs. And sometimes this stuff's not good for them. It ain't good for us. It ain't good for them. And so I had a tabletop griddle that I used to make sandwiches and so on. And so I would make bacon. And so I remember the first time I opened up one of those packages of bacon, and you could tell by looking at it was going to be good. And I'm making this bacon, and Wolfie walks into the kitchen, and he's smelling this. Now, I'll be honest, I don't make bacon very often. In fact, since this story and that case of bacon, I don't think I bought bacon since. I like bacon, but I also know that it's not the best for you. So Wolfie walks into the kitchen and he goes, "What's this?" And I go, "Wolfie, it's bacon. Hang on." And I can tell he's thinking, I've never smelled this before, but it smells good. And so I make the bacon and I eat my bacon. And I had always had the habit of I finish my food, then I feed the dogs because I don't want them begging. So I'm eating my bacon. And of course, dogs' sense of smell is so much better than a human sense of smell. He knows that what I'm eating is something that's going to taste good if I'd only give him a slice. And I gave him a slice. So I rolled it up and I handed it. I go, "There you go, Wolfie, that's bacon." And he eats it, and then he starts glaring at me. And I know what he's thinking. He's thinking, I've been with you for 15 years. Bacon has existed the entire time, and you've never made it for me. Why am I still with you? But for the next few months, I was eating bacon a lot. And so was Wolfie. I wasn't giving Wolfie a lot of bacon, okay? But he knew, we're having bacon today. That stuff's good. And I tried to explain to him, "Wolfie, if I'd been giving you bacon for the last 15 years, you wouldn't have made it this far. Trust me." Trust me on that one. But I bought the 25-pound case of bacon from Christine. And, I used to see her every single day because she ran that stand. Even if I didn't stop in, I'd see her and wave. Would see her around town. Her kids were very, very active in activities at the school. When they had the parade, I think it was the 4th of July parade, I remember seeing one of her kids on the float. And I know that her kids were involved in the different pageants and stuff, so on. I believe her son also played football. And when her son graduated from high school, she made a point of inviting me to the graduation party. And I remember going there, and only people I knew there were her and her kids. But I met a bunch of locals. That was fun. But she made a point of inviting me because she knew that I was a stranger from out of town and I didn't know anybody, She's always very, very friendly, very, very nice, and made a point of welcoming me to that little community. It's kind of funny because after seeing that she'd passed away, I started thinking about this, and I realized that there was actually a lot of more interaction I had with her where she'd gone out of her way to get me involved in the community. And so, for instance, there was an event, I think once a year, and it was a fundraiser. And the local school would take the gymnasium and turn it into a craft show. And you could buy a table for $10, $15. It wasn't much. And when I'd mentioned to Christine that I wrote books, I gave her a couple books, but she had said, you should get a table at the craft show and sell books. And I said, sure, why not? So I got a table, like I said, $10, $15. And I set all my books up there, and people were walking through, and I was selling and signing books. It was a lot of fun. And she had some side business thing going on, and she had a table there also. But again, I wouldn't have thought of doing that if she hadn't suggested it to me. And I've also mentioned before, and I hope you know this, but there's a story, and it's a video I've got on one of my channels, about how I found some really cool stuff in the metal detector, including a belt buckle that I sold for a lot of money. And I was living in Eau Claire when that happened. And so I used to talk to her about local places and like where was the school before it is, because there's a modern school there now. Where was the old school? And she told me, and I learned a lot of stuff about the local history also because of her. So whenever I couldn't take Wolfie with me places, I had people who could watch him for me. But if I was going to be gone for just like the day, leave in the morning, come back at night, because the hamburger stand was right there, I'd mentioned to her one time about if she knew anybody who could just check in on Wolfie for me, maybe take him out, walk him around, feed him, whatever. And she goes, oh, my daughters would love to. And she had a daughter who was high school age and also a daughter who was elementary school age. And so I'd pay them to do that. I'd just give them the key to my house and say, can you make sure that he gets out a couple times during the day. And it's kind of funny because whenever I'd stop by as walking Wolfie, I'd often stop by the hamburger stand also. And I'd get whatever I get, and then, Wolfie'd hang out with me. And if Christine had brought her kids with her, especially the little girl. The little girl would come out and hang out with Wolfie for a while. So it was kind of sad because Wolfie passed away while I was living in Eau Claire. And a couple times I was going to go by and stop at the hamburger stand, and I saw that Christine was there with her daughter, and I didn't want her daughter to come and go, hey, where's Wolfie? Because I had to explain to her. But so Eau Claire was, I think, about a year and a half of my life, 2 years. I'm not exactly sure the length of time. And I had a great time. It was a small town, but I knew a couple people that I met there. I met Richard, who also passed away a couple of years ago, and he's the guy who had the Hemi Cuda that he let me drive, which is pretty cool. And by the way, I saw Richard the last time, I believe, was at a car show being held at the hamburger stand. Remember I told you there was like a big grassy area around it? Once a year, she would ask the local car guys to bring their cars and all hang out on one evening in the summertime. And I remember seeing Richard there with his Hemi Cuda. And so that was pretty cool. But since I left the area, I'd corresponded with Christine, but I had not actually seen her. I went back to Eau Claire one time, but she sold the hamburger stand, and so the new owners were running it. But so it's been a while since I saw her, but I saw on Facebook, like I said last night, that she passed away. So very, very difficult to understand things like that because, you know, like I said, she's substantially younger than I am. But there you go. So Christine from Eau Claire, the woman who sold me the 25-pound case of bacon. And by the way, I was the first customer that summer at her hamburger stand, ice cream stand, whatever you want to call it. I was also her last. Because I remember asking her, when do you close for the season? And she said, I think I'm going to close it this week. And so every morning I would check. And one morning I was going by, and she said, just to let you know, today is the last day. I go, what time are you closing? She was 5 o'clock. And at 4:55, I made a point of being there and ordering, and I believe I ordered an ice cream sundae, and I was the last customer. So I don't even know if I told her that, but I was her first customer and her last customer that year. Following year, she sold the business to somebody else, and she was there for a transitional period of time to help the woman get it up and running. But a great person, very, very friendly and welcoming, and one of the people, in fact, she had to be the person who made my life in Eau Claire go as smoothly as it did, because you can move to a small town and things might not work out for you depending on how the locals are. But it was so cool because, like I said, her stand was right there on Main Street. I could see it out my window, and she was such a great person. So she'll be missed. That's Christine, my friend from Eau Claire. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.